Okay, so let's talk about the Colour of Magic. So I just finished the Colour of Magic story. So this has like different chapters. They're like set up as stories, but they're like chapters. So the first one is called The Colour of Magic, so we've come to the end of that, and then the next one is called The Sending of 8. So there's 4 of them, so 1, 2, 3, yeah, so I'll try and check in at the end of each one. That seems like a good place, although the Colour of Magic is definitely the longest one, and each one, oh no, 2 of them, Colour of Magic, and the next one, The Sending of 8, have a prologue as well. This is such a great start. This is a really funny start. Obviously, publication wise, this is the first book that came out in the Discworld. I was having a mooch on the Discworld Reddit, and some people were saying this isn't a good book to start with. I'm really enjoying it though. I won't say I'm like out of the loop. Strangely, where we've ended at the end of the Colour of Magic like chapter is all I remember from when I read this before. I read it a few years ago as a digital copy from the library, and that's where I seem to remember it ending. It didn't have these other bits, so I'm wondering if something went wrong with the copy that I borrowed, or something along those lines, because I've had a look at the next bit, The Sending of 8, and I don't, it's not ringing any bells. So we follow our 2 main characters are Twoflower, who is a tourist to the Discworld, and in particular in the town, like I think it is possibly like the main, I think it's possibly the main town, or at least it's like the town he arrives in, and it's called, probably going to mispronounce it, Ankh-Morpork. So he is a tourist, and he has a lot of money, but from the place he's from, which doesn't seem to be the Discworld, maybe like another dimension, he doesn't have a lot of money, and he realised he was just going to work himself to a grave. He's an insurance adjuster or something, so he decided to retire early and take what savings he did have and go travelling, which is how he's ended up here. And by happenstance he comes across Rincewind, who is a magician. He's a bit of a poor magician. He only really has one spell. In this world, the magic works that you spend months learning the spell, and then you like read it, it goes in your head, and then once you use it, it's gone, or something like that. So I don't really know how one becomes quite a skilled magic wielder in this world. I'm sure I'll find out at some point. And he Twoflower has this little like treasure chest that has like hundreds of little legs, and it runs around, and it's clearly magic of some description. And Rincewind recognises that the wood used for the treasure chest is very expensive wood, so he approaches Twoflower. Rincewind is actually a magician that's skilled in languages. He's got an innate gift for languages. He was a student at Unseen University, and he is able to talk to Twoflower in a language that they can both understand. Prior to that, Twoflower is using, it's like a translator book. It's quite funny. So when he talks, he uses like loads of terms. He's reading a translation, so he's like, I wish for an accommodation, a room, lodgings, the lodging house, full board. Are your rooms clean? A room with a view? What is the rate for one night? So, yeah, and then there's like asking him if he wants food, and he's like, food, yes, cutlet, hash, chop, stew, ragout, fiscus, mince, and then a whole load of things. And then the innkeeper's like, all of that? And it's just him like he's translating the word food and it's giving him like those options. Are you going to sit with me? Yeah, you've probably removed. Baby girl came and did a book review for her book. Yeah, so Rincewind ends up helping him. So there's just a few things that like I highlighted that I thought were really interesting. So firstly, at the beginning, the prologue for The Colour of Magic just like explains the world. So the world it's a flat like disc, and it sits on top of a turtle, the great Aton turtle, which just swims through the sky. It has like some of the things that the fundamental questions about nature and purpose of the universe that haven't been answered yet. So for example, what was Atuan's or Atun's, I'm gonna have to look up how to pronounce that, actual sex? This vital question, said the astrozoologist with mountain authority, would not be answered until a larger and more powerful gantry was constructed for a deep space vessel. In the meantime, they could only speculate about the revealed cosmos. There was, for example, the theory that Aten had come from nowhere and would continue at a uniform, cruel, or steady gait into nowhere for all time. This theory was popular among academics. An alternative, favoured by those for a religious persuasion, was that Aten was crawling from the birthplace to the time of mating, as were all the stars in the sky, which were obviously still carried by giant turtles. When they arrived, they would briefly and passionately mate for the first and only time, and from that fiery union, new turtles would be born to carry a new pattern of worlds. This was known as the Big Bang Hypothesis. I love that. And this has so much humour. I can understand why people talk about Terry Pratchett's humour. And the way it's written is just so interesting. So the Twoflower, the tourist, is at this inn. He's just arrived, and all eyes in the room are watching a stranger, except for a pair belonging to Rincewind the wizard, who was sitting in the darkest corner nursing a mug of very small beer. He was watching the luggage. Watch Rincewind. Look at him. Scrawny, like most wizards, and clad in a dark red robe with a few, and then it goes on. I just like the way it switches from everyone's watching Twoflower, except Rincewind. Let's watch Rincewind, and then it goes into like Rincewind's POV basically, and I really, really love how that's written. And then they have this like element of Rincewind and Twoflower have come to a language that they have in common that they can speak in. But Rincewind doesn't always know like the correct words, or like some of the words are, to get there he has to like do like a roundabout phrasing. So when he wants to talk about mercenaries, he says you come to hire mercenaries, but for mercenaries he says warriors who fight for the tribe with the most milk nut meal. So I like that element of it. It's very true to like, it's very true to translating things when you're discussing stuff. Okay, so Twoflower also has this camera. It's like a camera box that he's using to take photos. They're like Polaroids, which is new to everyone in the Discworld, or at least in the town where we currently are. How it works is there's a so Rincewind is holding it. He's got it like round his neck. And the box said, "It's no good. I've run out of pink." A hitherto unnoticed door opened in front of his eyes. A small, green and hideously warty humanoid figure leaned out, pointed at a colour-encrusted palette in one clawed hand, and screamed, "No pink, see?" Screeched the homunculus. "No good you going on pressing a lever when there's no pink, is there? If you wanted pink, you shouldn't have took all those pictures of young ladies, should you? It's monochrome from now on, friend, all right?" "All right, yeah, sure," said Rincewind. In one dim corner of the little box, he thought he could see an easel and a tiny unmade bed. He hoped he couldn't. So yeah, inside this box that he was just like clicking a button, and then a Polaroid was coming out. He discovers there's a little guy in there who's actually painting the pictures, which is just such a funny little extra element. And that the little camera guy, he actually is like a character that is used for other things, and like he's involved in the storyline. And there's like a little demon in the watch, which makes the watch work, because Twoflower also has a watch. And they refer to the little one, the very small demon imprisoned within, so it's looked up from its abacus and scowled. So that's like a little demon in this gold coin that he wears on his wrist, like a watch. So I'm assuming this little guy in the camera is also some sort of demon. But yeah, and then Rincewind's explaining to Twoflower about how magic works in this world. So it's like, no spells are much good. It takes 3 months to commit even a simple one to memory, and then once you've used it, poof, it's gone. That's what's so stupid about the whole magic thing, you know. You spend 20 years learning a spell that makes nude virgins appear in your bedroom, and then you're so poisoned by quicksilver fumes and half blind from reading old grimoires that you can't remember what happens next. Yeah, so Rincewind is definitely kind of laughed at and bullied a little bit. And then Twoflower being there and being so rich and stuff, and just like throwing money at innkeepers and whatever, has definitely caused a change within the town. So he gets kidnapped a bit later on, and then someone appear, like this group of people appear, and including some like security trolls. I say, on behalf of the guild, I'm here on behalf of the Guild of Merchants and Traders to protect our interests, you might say, meaning the little man, like Twoflower. And then the other guy, the guy that's kidnapped Twoflower, says, I'm sorry, I thought you said Guild of Merchants. How long has this guild been in existence? And they say, since this afternoon. I'm Vice Guild Master in charge of tourism, you know. And what is this tourism of which you speak? We're not quite sure. Speaking on behalf of the wine sellers of Moorpork, tourism means business, see? And that's pretty much all they know. And Twoflower's been trying to explain insurance to these guys, and they pronounce it as like insuance. And he sells the owner of the the owner of the inn where he initially stayed and met Rincewind and then was kidnapped back to. He sold him a policy for his inn in case it goes up in flames. And then the owner of the inn is like, actually, I would get like 200 gold or whatever if this goes up in flames. Maybe I should do that. And he starts thinking on that, and then when Rincewind saves Twoflower and they're like fleeing the inn and trying to flee the city, he bumps into someone in a tall dark figure, and then he realizes he's got it had to be deaf. No one else went round with empty eye sockets, and of course a scythe over one shoulder was another clue. And Rincewind's basically like, why are you surprised? And Deaf says, I was surprised that you jostled me, Rincewind, for I have an appointment with you this very night. And Rincewind's like, oh no. And he's like, oh yeah, of course. Of course, what's so bloody vexing about the whole business is that I was expecting to meet thee in Persephopolis. And then he says to Rincewind, I could lend you a very fast horse so Rincewind can get there for their appointment, which is quite funny. I know that Deaf is like an ongoing character throughout the books. I don't know if he has his own collections. Like this one is part of the Unseen University collection, it says on here. And the next one, Light Fantastic, is the Unseen University collection. But I was just looking at the next one. Equal Rites is the Witches collection, so presumably the person of Witches collection. But yeah, so Twoflower's talking about the brawl that ends up happening in the inn when Rincewind saves him, and Twoflower says, do you think I ought to thank them, or did you arrange it? Like, he thinks it's been done for him because he said to Rincewind he wants to see like an authentic experience. And then the reason Rincewind bumps into Deaf is because Deaf goes into the inn, and Broadman, who is the owner of the inn, is trying to set it on fire for the insurance, and Deaf lights the candle for him. And then we like jump back to where the first part took us, and it was just such a fast-paced fun start, and it introduced a lot of characters, and we met some of the characters that are obviously going to be popping up throughout. So yeah, it was just really fun. So now we're going on to the sending of 8. So I'll come back and let you know after that. I'm just getting ready for work, so ignore the physical appearance. And I thought I would pop in and tell you about the sending of 8. So this is one of the chapters that we had a prologue for, and we discover well, pretty much this whole chapter is about like roughly how the gods and the deities of Discworld work. So the prologue introduces some of the gods, and they are playing a game with like dice and pieces and counters, and we quickly discover that the pieces they're playing with, like the crocodile god, adds in 2 pieces. It's hard for him to talk because he's got tusks. Renegade wizard, presumably, and From Fort of Clerk, which I'm not sure what that is, but it's obviously a Twoflower. And then the lady, who is also a player, adds a because this chapter goes between what's happening to Rincewind and Twoflower, and like what's happening in the gods games, and I think it's the lady adds a it says a pure soul of a hero or something. So Rincewind and Twoflower are joined by a hero at some point. Pick up not long after we left them at the end of the Colour of Magic chapter, and they're walking along, and we've got confirmation that the little guy in the picture box is a demon as well, and he's the picture imp, they refer to him as, and he is like hanging out of the box having a cigarette, and then just chatting to them. So he's like getting more involved in Rincewind and Twoflower, and then they're walking along, and then they can hear like a noise like dice rolling, and then suddenly a 5-meter tall mountain troll appears in front of them. And then they hear dice, and suddenly like this rock appears and things, which is quite funny. And then somehow Rincewind is like hanging from a tree, just hanging, like struggling, and Death is just sitting there watching him like, why don't you let go? I can't hang around all day. Rincewind says, well, I can. And then the tree pulls Rincewind into it, and he's been saved by these like little tree elf things, and then he quickly realizes he's not saved, he's been kidnapped, and they're gonna kill him. And he asks what happened to Twoflower, and they say that he made it to the temple of the Bel Shamharoth, which is the soul eater. And then Rincewind starts thinking about this spell he's got in his head, and we find out that it was from a grimoire that he shouldn't have been reading, and he read one of these like one of the 8 spells by this god, and he's like the god of 8, and that's what's in his head, and no one knows what the spell does until he uses it. So he doesn't use it because he doesn't know what it's going to do, or until he dies, and then the spell will just like speak itself into existence. But the Soul Eater is the like god of 8, so you don't say 8 around him or even think of the number 8. So Rincewind says the Soul Eater, his number lieth between 7 and 9. It is twice 4 and things like that. Yeah, so it says 8 was also the number of Bel Shamharoth, which was why a sensible wizard would never mention a number if he could avoid it. Or you'll be 8 alive, apprentices were jokingly warned. And Rincewind's room number in his hall of residence had been 7A, so they just don't use 8 at all for wizards in the magic world. So Rincewind ends up at the same temple where Twoflower is, and then that's when they meet Harun, who is a hero, which the lady had obviously played earlier on in the book. And Harun has a magical black sword called Kring, and he talks. He's got a soul, and he talks, and he's like blah, blah, blabbing away, which is really annoying everyone. And then the three of them, so we've got Twoflower, Rincewind, and Harun are like wandering around this temple trying to find a way to escape. Harun has just like appeared there, you know, just magically gone from wherever he was to there, and he's like, I don't know how I got here, but I'm a hero, and you know, walking through temples and dungeons is my jam, so it's fine, I'll just continue. He's quite a himbo by the sounds of it. And Twoflower has no idea what's going on, but he's just like living his best life, taking pictures and things. Then they all bump into each other, and Rincewind is like, don't say the number between 7 and 9, 4 plus 4, don't say it. Then he explains to Twoflower like how it works, and basically to try and contain the magic a little bit, spells were imprisoned in spell books, and then when you read them they escape the spell book and go into your head. So but there's also spell books that have like uncontrollable power in them. There's spell books that leak magic as well, and that causes like these things to happen in the world. And at Unseen University, which was where Rincewind went and got kicked out of, and they have the greatest of all grimoires there, which was the one that Rincewind actually looked at, which he shouldn't have looked at, and so he learnt one of the spells. Yeah, even as Rincewind's thinking about like the architecture of the temple, he's like there was 7A passages radiating from it, because obviously he's not going to say the number 8 even in his head. At a low altar with the same number of sides as 4 times 2. It didn't occupy the centre of the room, however. The centre was occupied by a huge stone slab with twice as many sides as a square, and things like that. So even in his head he doesn't want to say it. And then they bump into Harun, and he's like, listen Harun, don't say the number, it's about numbers. Look, you know, if you add 7 and 1, or 3 and 5, or take 2 from 10, you get a number. While you're here, don't say it, and we might all stand a chance of getting out of here alive, or merely just dead. And then the sword is just like, why can't he say 8? And then that obviously starts the chain reaction, and all these tentacles come out, and they grab Twoflower and are pulling him down like into this pit and stuff. And Twoflower shouting, you have to use your spell, and whilst this is happening, Twoflower wants to get a photo of like the tentacles that are trying to kill him. So he sets up the picture box on a tripod as he's being yanked by like the tentacles, and he's like, oh, it's quite dark in here. So he gets out this little cage of salamanders, and the salamanders are all plump, and he attaches it onto the picture box, and basically they are like a flash. They work like a flash, and the little picture imp says, they're about ripe now, I can't hold them any longer, everyone smile please. There was a flash of light, so white and so bright that it didn't seem like light at all, and it's so bright it makes the Bel Shamharoff scream, and he like scuttles away because he's got a big eye and the flash is too much for him. And then all Twoflower's doing is complaining that it was too bright, like the picture's going to be overexposed. But yeah, so they do end up getting out. Twoflower and Rincewind decides they're going to ask Harun to join them on their quest or their tourist tour. And Twoflower's like, but maybe he won't want to hang out with us, like. And then Rincewind says, what is it the heroes really want? And Twoflower's like, gold. And Rincewind says, no, like, I mean, really want. And Rincewind's worked out, as long as they keep taking photos of Haran and giving them to him, he will keep them alive and help them, and basically work as like a little bodyguard as they're going along. And then at the end we just have the Fate, who was one of the gods, is like, oh, you win, and pushes the souls over to the lady, and she's just like, yep, I did win. So yeah, it makes you wonder how much of life in the Discworld is controlled, or rather played with, by gods. Yeah, so now we are on to the lure of the worm. I'm about to go to work, so I'm going to switch to audio, so when I get back I will definitely be able to tell you what I think of that. And then I'm almost done. This has been such a fun journey, and I've really enjoyed taking the time to like annotate it and make notes on things that I enjoy. It's really helped me kind of appreciate it a little bit more. It's helped me to slow down with the reading pace, which has been fun. But yeah, really enjoying this so far, as much as I hoped I would, which is good. So I'll see you soon for the next like chapter thoughts. Let's talk about the third story in The Colour of Magic, which is the Lure of the Worm. Is that what it's called? The Lure of the Worm. I hate the way I pronounce lure. So I'm going to try not to say it too much. I don't know. I don't think it sounds right in my accent. I like the way it's pronounced by Australians, like kind of lure. I don't know. It just sounds like they're pronouncing the word properly. I feel like when I say lure, it sounds like I'm missing some letters out. I don't know. Accents are a funny thing. We've got Rincewind, Twoflower, and Haram, and they find this like they've just escaped the temple from the Ascending of the Eight, and they find themselves in this area that Rincewind's like, this is a magical, a strong magical field, and they decide to test it by like flipping a coin, and Rincewind guesses the outcome, and loads of times he guesses edge and it lands on like on the edge of the coin. And then we learn a little bit of history about the magic wars that have happened years prior to this book. And it says like the mage wars. Did I say magic wars? I can't remember. The precise origins of the mage wars have been lost in the fogs of time, but disc philosophers agree that the first men, shortly after their creation, understandably lost their temper, and great and pyrotechnic were the battles that followed. The sun wheeled across the sky, the seas boiled, weird storms ravaged the land, small white pigeons mysteriously appeared on people's clothing, and the very stability of the disc carried as it was through space on the backs of 4 giant turtle riding elephants was threatened. I'd forgotten about the elephants. Like when I described the world, I said like they're on a turtle's back, like swimming through space, and I completely forgotten that actually there's elephants, 4 elephants on the turtle's shell, like on its back, and that's what the disc is on. So they are testing these coins, and they say like they do various things, and then the fifth time they flip the coin, it turned into a small yellow caterpillar and crawled away. The 6th, upon reaching its zenith, vanished with a sharp spang, and moments later there was a small thunder clap. And then Rincewind's talking about how this is like a magic field, and a bush near them says precisely. I just love like the world that Terry Pratchett is building, and I think that the way it makes me really wonder how can I phrase this? So the world building we get in fantasy books is very different in like modern fantasy books to what we're seeing here, and it makes me wonder if I know that there's the big discussion of like we're losing media literacy and like understanding and the ability to be critical with the push towards only reading for enjoyment, which there's nothing wrong with that at all. But it does make me wonder if there is a part of books that are published now that has an element of spoon feeding the author, or for lack of a better phrasing, like dumbing it down slightly for the reader. Did I say author? For reader? Because in this, we Terry Pratchett is just sprinkling them bits about the world. There's no serious amount of like info dumping or explanation to the world or what's happening. You just you have to pick it up as you go along, and presumably across the 41 books he will be doing that throughout, so we'll just learn stuff as we need it. I feel like if a modern fantasy author were to do that, someone somewhere would be very vocal on some form of review site or social media and say, oh, they're just making it up as they go along because it's convenient, they need that part here, rather than how it's approached in this, which is you just didn't need to know that at that point. And yeah, it's just quite interesting, the difference in how world building is approached in fantasy. And I'm not saying either is a positive or a negative, I'm just literally pointing out something I've thought about. I'm not saying that this is right, I could just be rambling crap, you know. So then we meet he's literally described as an old man, and he is actually dead. He's been dead for 3 months, but he's not stepped aside. He is the ruler of this realm, this town, city, and none of his children are ready to take over the role. So when he died, he just hung around. So he's kind of like a ghost, I guess. And he has a daughter, Lisa probably, and I think she was the one that killed him, and she believes that because she killed her dad, the throne of Wurmberg is rightfully hers. It says it's rightfully hers, of course, but tradition said that only a man could rule the Wurmberg. That irked Lisa. When she was angry, the power flowed stronger, and the dragons were especially big and ugly. If she had a man, things would be different. Someone who, for preference, was a big strapping lad, but short on brains. Someone who would do what he was told. So she's looking for a himbo to marry her so that she can take over as ruler. And I got to appreciate the hustle there. And her and her dad have noticed Rincewind, Twoflower, and Huron, and she's looking at Huron and she's like, I think he's pretty dumb. I reckon he would be perfect to marry. And there was the mention of the dragon. So in this realm, there's dragons as well. However, the dragons are conjured by the imagination of those in charge, and the king, who is still hanging around, he makes a point of how his kids, so he's got Lisa, his daughter, and then I think 2 sons, makes a point of how their imagination just isn't that great, and like the dragons are pretty unimpressive. They're not overly scary, and they kind of fade the further away from the palace they get. So they're not overly strong. Rincewind is, no, Twoflower is so excited at the prospect of seeing a dragon. Like, they see them far away in the distance and they're like, oh, dragons. And Twoflower's like, you don't understand, all my life I've wanted to see dragons. And then Rincewind says, from the inside, because Rincewind is sensibly scared of the dragons. So when the dragons arrive, they're semi-transparent, which, as I explained, is because they're like far from the palace. They're not very strong. So they get like kidnapped by these dragon riders, and Rincewind is like, I wonder how much damage these dragons can actually do, considering they're like semi-transparent. So they get separated, and Rincewind gets taken by this naked guy on a semi-transparent dragon. He takes him away, and that is one of the sons, so like Lisa's brother, and he takes Rincewind to his and they like hang out in like this little cave and like hang upside down from this ceiling. They're like naked, hanging upside down from the ceiling to try and be one with the dragons or something. And he's like, you're gonna battle me. And Rincewind's like, I really just don't want to, quite frankly. And then Lisa takes Twoflower and Haran, because obviously she is looking at Haran and she's like, he's gonna be my husband. Yeah, the Rincewind is being told, hey, you need to fight, you need to surrender, and Rincewind's like, no, I don't think so. I'm not a hero, I'm not gonna fight you. And Rincewind knew himself to be almost certainly the worst wizard on the Discworld, since he knew but one spell, yet for all that he was still a wizard, and thus the inexplorable laws of magic. This meant that upon his demise it would be Death himself who appeared to claim him, instead of sending one of his numerous servants, as is usually the case. So that is like a recurring discussion that we do have throughout this, that Rincewind knows he's not at the point of dying because he can't see Death, and Death has to come and collect him personally. Then we flip to like Twoflower and Haran, who are in a jail cell, and they are discussing dragons, and Haran's like, dragons don't exist, and Twoflower's like, we literally just saw dragons, and Haran's like, no, I don't know what we're seeing, but they're not dragons. I expect it was just magic. And Twoflower says, well, they look like dragons. I always wanted to see dragons ever since I was a little lad. Dragons flying around in the sky, breathing flames. And Haran interrupts and says, they just used to crawl about in swamps and stuff, and all they breathed was stink. They weren't very big either. They used to collect firewood. So Twoflower has this this really glorious idea of what a dragon is, and Haran's like, I mean, in real life they're not that great, honestly. And Twoflower says, if the world didn't contain these beautiful creatures, it wasn't half the world it ought to be. And I was like, I completely agree, to be fair. And then Lisa separates the two of them, and she's talking to Haran, and she says, you passed the first test. What's your name, Barbarian? And Haran's annoyed because everyone keeps calling him Barbarian. And she's like, Lisa Dragon Lady. And he says, you're the lord of this place? And she says, that remains to be seen. You have a look about you of a hired sword. I could use you. If you pass the test, of course. There are 3 of them. You've passed the first. And what about the other? And then he takes a moment to work it out. 2. And she says, oh, perilous. And he's like, and the fee? Valuable. And if I pass these tests, if you had failed the first test, you would be dead by now. That may be considered a typical penalty. And he says, okay, so what's the second test? You must kill my 2 brothers. Both at the same time, or one after the other? Consecutively or concurrently? What? Just kill them. Good fighters, are they? Renowned. So in return for all this, you will wed me and become Lord of the Weinberg. There was a long pause. Haran's eyebrows twisted themselves in unaccustomed calculation. I get you and this mountain? He said at last. Yes. She looked him squarely in the eye and her lips twitched. The fee is worthwhile, I assure you. And he's like, yeah, okay, cool. Sure, why not? And so he gets taken away and Twoflower is just left in that jail cell, just like completely forgotten about, and it's all dark. And then he starts hearing a voice in his head, and Twoflower's like, there's someone in this cell with me. So how did you get here? You summoned me, master. I don't remember doing that. In your mind, you called me up. In your mind. You mean I just thought of you and you were there? Yes. It was magic? Yes. But I've thought about dragons all my life. In this place, the frontier between thought and reality is probably a little confused. All I know is that once I was not, and then you fought me, and then I was. Therefore, of course, I'm yours to command. So Twoflower has basically imagined a dragon into real life, which is amazing. And then Twoflower uses the dragon to obviously escape, and he comes across the king, the ruler, and they have a discussion about how the magic works. And he has a big complaint about his kids and how none of them are great, and none of them are what he wants to hand over the realm to. And he's like, but you have the power, talking to Twoflower. And he's like, eyeing up Twoflower to take over as ruler. And then in the meantime, like, Harun has a battle with Lisa's two brothers. There's like dragons involved, and he kind of wins in like a silly way. And then when he's about to win his prize, which is a naked Lisa, a dragon swoops in and picks him up, and that is Twoflower and Rincewind on the dragon that Twoflower named Nine Reeds, and they grab him up to save him. He's like, damn it. And then we see Death. He's come to finally take Grisha, which is the king of the realm. So he's finally gone properly into Death, and they're just like escaping away, our three main characters. And then Twoflower passes out, and so the dragon's starting to like fade, because obviously it's connected to Twoflower's imagination, and Rincewind's trying desperately to imagine a dragon, and the dragon's like, you just got a crap imagination, what are you talking about? Rincewind wakes up, and he's not Rincewind. He's called Dr. Rincewind, and he is like, it says here, all of this was, I don't know, he wakes up in another world, and it's like, he wakes up, he's Dr. Rincewind, 33, a bachelor born in Sweden, raised in New Jersey, and a specialist in the breakaway oxidation, So he's like a scientist in our world, and that's how he's woken up. And he's on an aeroplane, and he's aware there's like an ancient suitcase coming to eat him, which is obviously Twoflower suitcase. Sudden darkness, a brilliant flash, and that's basically the end of that story. So we end with like, have they died? Are they in like another world? What is going on? It sounds crazy. Then we come into the final story, which is called Close to the Edge. Okay, so let's talk about what's it called? Close to the Edge, the final chapter / story in Discworld. Yeah, Close to the Edge, in The Colour of Magic, not Discworld. This one right here, it was my favorite story of them all. Now obviously that could just be because we've spent all this time building up the characters, and then this was like just a perfect encapsulation of it. But I really enjoyed this one and what it had to say. So in this, we pick up like where we left our characters on the plane that was going into the Circle Sea. And I don't think I mentioned this when I talked about it. So at the end of the last story, the world plane flamed and died in Rincewind's mind. Was that a ship down there? So like the plane that he was on and all of that, it seems as though that was part of his imagination. The cold waters of the Circle Sea roared up at him and sucked him down into their green, suffocating embrace. A moment later, there was another splash as the luggage, still bearing a label carrying the powerful travelling rune TWA, also hit the sea. Later on, they used it as a raft, and that's kind of where we left off that story. So we do have like a little miniature story at the beginning of this chapter, where we meet this guy who is a arch astronomer, and he is like a great craftsman, and every time he crafts something for someone, they like mutilate him basically. So he builds this, he used to be great at metal work, and so he built made the metal warriors that guard the tomb of Pichu. I designed the light dams of the Great Nef. I built the palace of the Seven Deserts. And yet, when I built the Golem army for Pichu, he loaded me down with gold, and then, so that I would create no other work to rival my work for him, he had my eyes put out. So he lost his eyes. And then, so then he started to become good at a different craft. And then they were like, yeah, and so he created something else for someone else, and then they're like, to make sure that he cannot do this for someone else, they hamstrung him so that he could not escape. And then yeah, so he's doing all of these various crafts for people, and every time they do something physical to him to stop him from being able to recreate it or whatever, he's just having the absolute worst luck. And he has made what we later find out to be like a spaceship. It's not a spaceship, kind of is a spaceship. Basically, these people want to see what's over the edge of the disc, like where the elephants are. And he's built the ship, the vessel they will be using to do that. And the guy that he's talking to, who is the master launch controller, he's saying to him, yeah, and in my memory, like, we made some agreements, and the artist's like, yeah, in return you would set me free and refrain from chopping off any appendages. I require no treasure. Please don't hurt me, basically. And then the launch controller is like, yeah, I lied. So this poor guy, he ends up getting killed. We join Rincewind and Twoflower, and they are on a raft, and they are bailing water out because it's like filling up with water. So they're on the water at like the edge of the disc, yeah, going towards the end of it. So Rincewind's like, we're being carried over the edge of the world, and so they're a bit. Well, Rincewind is quite panicky. Twoflower is like, oh, should we have some lunch? He's very calm. He's like, I can't see any sense in panicking, basically. And then they get saved by like a water creature, a water guy. He is from another planet, possibly. Yep. He's a sea troll, basically, and he's got a boat, and he saves them. Rincewind's like, so why aren't we going over the edge then? And the sea troll, who is called Tethys, says, because your boat hit the circumference, and that's what it's called, the circumference that goes around the edge, and it like catches things, just looks like a net to stop like large things going down over the edge of the disc. Tethys is like, yeah, so basically I'm going to take you to my little cabin. I work on these waters. I go around and like keep the water safe, make sure nothing goes off the edge. You're now going to do the exact same job, because that's what happens. You're like a servant now, because that's what happened with me. I landed here, and then my entire life is now looking after this water, and that's now what happens to you. A discussion about, so I don't think I've mentioned it before, but throughout this there's been this discussion of this color that can only really be seen by like wizards and death. So when Rincewind sees the color, he knows that like death is near, and it's which makes sense because we've had like the sending of the 8, and obviously 8 is quite a big deal in terms of numbering this. And when they talk about the rainbow, there is like a 8th color that only certain people can see. And it's called octarine, which is the color of magic. So I just thought that was quite interesting, because firstly it's the title of the book, and secondly it's interesting. So, and then it says Rincewind always thought it looked like a greenish purple. So there we go. If you wanted to know what the color of magic was, it's a greenish purple, and presumably that is something that will come up again in further books. And then there's like this section that has a little discussion about how plant life works on the disc, which I just thought was so interesting. So you have like annuals, which if you sow them this year, they will come up next year. Biannuals, which if you sow it this year, they'll grow next year. Periannuals, which sowed this year, grow until further notice. Then we've got the reannuals, which is like a 4-dimensional twist that if you plant them this year, they'll have grown last year. And like there's all these different plants that are growing, which I really like. Just the discussed in the last story, I really love the world building. I love how we just learn these random things. It's really making me want to read the Edge Chronicles series, which was my favourite middle grade series when I was younger, and that was quite similar, because we follow like a naive character and we learn about the world as we go along, and I just really enjoy that as a concept. So Twoflower's like, I don't think you understand, I'm a citizen of the Golden Empire. I'm sure Kroll would not wish to incur the displeasure of the Emperor. And then the troll says, how will the Emperor know? Do you think you're the first person from the Empire who has ended up on the circumference? So this is like, Twoflower's like, you just can't keep me as a slave, because I literally belong to another empire. And Charles just like, sucks to be you, doesn't it? And then the troll like hangs to prove that he is in charge. He hangs Rincewind over the edge, and Rincewind's upside down, and he sees the elephants, and that's just such a cool concept. I can imagine that would look really good on the screen, like if it was done in a film or TV show. I could imagine that would look fantastic. And Twoflower's like, fantastic. If only I had my picture box. What else is down there? I mean, if you jumped off, what would you see? Just forever unserious and unbothered. They're like to the troll, why are you even here? And he says, well, I fell off the edge. So he's clearly just, you know, in his own little world. And he explains about the land he came from. So he fell off the edge of like his world, and then he like traveled through space and saw lots of different worlds, and he ended up on the disc. And he says like, there was one, I think it was the one with what I thought was this strange ring of mountains around it that turned out to be the biggest dragon you could ever imagine, covered in snow and glaciers and holding its tail in its mouth. That sounds awesome. I would love to see that planet. And now his job is to just look after the circumference and keep it nice and safe. Rincewind's like, as long as I don't see death, we're safe. Then they get kind of taken away by this hooded figure. They're basically going to be, it's decided they're going to be used as sacrifices for this aforementioned vessel that's been built. When that goes over the edge, there's like this group of a religious order that live on the edge, and they're the ones running this expedition, and they believe that they need to have a sacrifice to give the vessel good juju to go over, and they decide that Twoflower and Rincewind are going to be perfect for that. So these people come and collect them. They're like hooded people in like robes, and Rincewind's trying to talk to one of the ladies that's come to collect them, and he says, what's your name? She's like, my name is Immaterial. And he's like, that's a very pretty name. I just think Rincewind is so ridiculous. And then being told, you know, basically you will be doing this, like jumping off the edge kind of thing, as a sacrifice. And then the lady who we met in Ascending of the Eight, she was the one that was playing their characters in the in like the board game of the different gods. She comes and she decides she's going to help them a little bit. She says like, this is what you need to do when they come get you. You need to do this and this, and they manage to escape, and then they end up in this room, and they see these like costumes, and they put them on, and the costumes come with like a helmet, and they realize that it's a like what we realise as the reader, that it's basically like a spacesuit. They are basically dressing up as astronauts. They need to take the place of people that were going to be in a vessel, so that's their escape plan. And at the same time, there is discussions amongst the order of this creature that's come out of the sea and is just destroying everyone in its path. We find out that it's the chest on its way to Twoflower, and it's just literally killing and ripping apart anyone that's in the way, which again, we love that chest, right? The chest is so cute. And then something goes wrong, obviously. Rincewind and Twoflower are in the vessel, and the luggage is still following them, and they're like, there's not really anywhere we need to go, we just need to go down the edge where it was going to go. It says like they plunged it down into the university end, and then the Rincewind woke up and shivered. He was freezing cold, and he finds himself just kind of hanging down the edge. And then and then Death turns up, and he's like, oh shit. And he's like, what? Well, what am I going to die of? And Death's like, pardon? Well, I haven't broken anything, I haven't drowned, what am I going to die of? I'm just kind of hanging here. You can't be killed, you can't just be killed by Death, there has to be a reason. And Death says you could die of terror. And he's like, won't work. There doesn't have to be a reason, I can just kill you. And Rincewind's like, no, you can't do that, then that'd be murder. And then that's when Rincewind realises you're not even Death, and it's actually Death's like one of Death's little colleagues that he's sent, and he's like, yeah, he's really busy with a plague in Pseudodopolis, which is what Death mentioned, I think, when he bumped into Rincewind when Rincewind was escaping a city, and he was like, aren't you meant to be in the other city? And Rincewind's like, no, you can't take me because it has to be Death, I'm a wizard. So the demon or whatever is like, fine, I'll just go then, whatever. And then Rincewind's like, okay, what do I do? The whole creation was waiting for Rincewind to drop in. He did so. There didn't seem to be any alternative. The end. And that's actually the end. So he has actually dropped down the side of the edge now. What's going to happen? Well, great question. The next book, Light Fantastic, is in the Unseen University collection, so we'll be following Rincewind and Twoflower, so that's exciting that we will get an immediate answer. This book in general, though, was a great start to the series. This was a 5-star read, I don't know if I mentioned that, and just meeting the characters, it was so fun. And I just love that this world. I just love this world. I love the way Terry Pratchett writes it. I love the way he's like the imagination that he's used for it. I love the humour that's in it. It's so British in its humour. And I'm very excited for the different collections throughout. And I think I've mentioned this, I'm going to be reading them in publication order, not in like collections. So it'd be very exciting to dip in and out of different characters and seeing how their decisions change the disc, because things happen in the stories that actually change like other characters. Like it influences what happens to other characters. So if you read it in the collections, you might not be able to pick up that as well. I mean, it is a legitimate way to read the series, but yeah, that's why I've chosen to do it in publication order. So next one will be Light Fantastic, and we will be following Rincewind and Twoflower yet again. I'm very excited. I will come back to you once I've started that, but great start, absolutely great start. I finished Light Fantastic, and it is so much fun. This was, yeah, so enjoyable. And as I suspected, it was just one story. There's no chapters, and we just have page breaks. And yeah, we follow, as I said, we follow Rincewind and Twoflower, and they kind of get Paul Cohen and this young girl Bethany into their adventure as well, and they're just trying to, well, Rincewind's just trying to survive. He's fighting a spell in his head. Twoflower's just enjoying life, being a tourist, and Cohen and Bethany just kind of end up along for the journey, and they make their way back to Animal Park. That's it. And the other wizards at the university are capture Rincewind to get the spell. Shenanigans happen. And I presume, I mean, one of the things that I know about this series is, and this is one of the reasons that people often say this why, like, reading it in the publication order is such a great thing to do, because decisions made like early on change the world in future books. And whilst it doesn't affect your enjoyment, I think it gives you more enjoyment to be able to pick those things up. And this is very much one of those ones where I think we're going to see fallout of this later in the series. They end up in the Moorpork, and the the suitcase is just causing so much drama. It is like a demon out of hell just chasing Twoflower wherever he goes. And Twoflower got it from one of these shops. They just pop up and then you never see them again. And that's like a part of this story as well, because they do escape in one of those shops, and the shop owner has been cursed and cannot choose where the shop ends up. But it's basically like you'll be walking down the town that you know so well, like the street, and suddenly there'll be a shop door in a wall that never had a shop before, and then that might be gone the next day. And yes, so they're in the city, and Cohen and Bethany are trying to find Rincewind and Twoflower. Cohen finds the chest just staring at a wall. Even though it doesn't have eyes, he knows it's staring at a wall. And he's talking to the dwarf about it, and the dwarf's like, it's just a box. What's so special about a box? And Cohen said nothing. He squatted down painfully and peered closely at the lock on the lid. What's in it? Said Lockjaw. You wouldn't want to know, said Cohen. Help me up, will you? Yes, but this box. He waved his arms vaguely. Oblong? Eldritch, said Cohen mysteriously. Eldritch? Yeah. Oh. They stood looking at the box for a moment. Cohen? Yes. What does Eldritch mean? Well, Eldritch is... Cohen paused and looked down irritably. Give it a kick and you'll see. Lockjaw's steel-capped dwarf boot whammed into the side of the box. Cohen flinched. Nothing happened. I see, said the dwarf. Eldritch means wooden? No, said Cohen. It oughtn't have done that. I see, said Lockjaw, who didn't, and was beginning to wish Cohen hadn't gone out into all this hot sunlight. It ought to have run away, you think? Yes, or bitten your leg off. Ah, said the dwarf. Why don't we just go and have a little... So, yeah. But then the luggage does eventually move. It's just waiting for Rincewind and Twoflower to come back. Yeah, it's just so fun, and all of the little side characters that you meet, no matter how briefly you meet them, they're still so fun, and I'm just in love with this world already, and I'm only like 2 books in. When we get to the end, Twoflower's like, I think I'm done with this touristing. I'm just gonna go home for a bit. And then he asks the luggage if he'll stay with Rincewind and be Rincewind's luggage, and the luggage is like, yeah, okay. So yeah, and then Rincewind's just, we leave him kind of in this what's he gonna do kind of element. And so I think there's 4 books in the Unseen University collection. The Unseen University collection, I think, is just a Rincewind collection. Oh, I've got one coming up, actually. Oh, I've got a few. I've got 3 coming up. So there's at least 5 books in the trilogy in the collection. Hold on. So the next 2 vlogs, there'll be an Unseen University book. That's cool. Yeah, so this was great, and I really enjoyed meeting Cohen. I assume he's going to be a person that we meet again. He's just so, like, old and grumpy. Oh my god, yes, and deaf. Oh my god, I should write down my thoughts as I go along. Oh, she's not called Bethany, she's called Bethan. Oops. Rincewind ends up going into, like, the afterworld, I think, to get Twoflower. So they go to the House of Death, and they meet a Death's adopted daughter. She's called Isabel probably, and yeah, so Def adopted her when she was a little girl, and she's like, oh, he doesn't have many people come visit him socially, and then yeah, he's got some friends there, some gods or whatever, playing dominoes or dice or something. And I just really love Def, and I know that he has his own collection, so I'm looking forward to getting more from him, and I hope we get more from Isabel when we get more from him as well. But yeah, overall this was so much fun. I've really enjoyed it. So now we're leaving the Unseen University collection and we're going into the Witches collection. So Equal Rites. I finished Equal Rites. I did not do a midway check-in because I didn't actually I just basically read this in one sitting, so I didn't stop. So this is the first book that's outside of the Unseen University collection. This is the first in the Witches collection, and we follow a young girl who is kind of accidentally given wizard powers. So when a wizard's about to die, I've mentioned before that the number 8 is like a big important number in like wizard worlds, and we learned a lot about that in the first book, The Colour of Magic. But when a wizard's about to die, they go and find the 8th son of the 8th son of the 8th son, and they pass on their magic to the baby or the child or whatever, before they pass away. And this wizard turns up at this little farm one day and is like, yo, I'm about to die, I'm going to pass on the magic. And the farmer, the smith, might be a blacksmith, the blacksmith is like, oh, okay, but just like, okay, because his wife's giving birth at that moment. So the wizard goes in and the midwife's like, just so you know, and he's like, no time. He passes on his magic to the baby. It turns out to be a girl. It is the 8th child, but she's a girl with 7 brothers. So Esk basically has this wizard magic, and in this world, it's men are wizards, women are witches. So the town's witch, who serves as like the healer, midwife, etc, Granny Weatherwax, says to Esk's parents, like, we'll just basically never tell her, we won't tell anyone. She's got the wizard leaves her with a staff, and Granny's like, we'll just hide it, no one ever needs to know, because wizard magic is evil, it doesn't come from nature like witches magic, she doesn't need to know. So that's kind of how they decide to go about it. And as Esk grows up, she finds that she can kind of accidentally make things happen or do things, and it gets to a point where Granny Weatherwax talks to her parents and is like, okay, I'm going to train her to be a witch. She'll be my apprentice, and I'll train her to be a witch and actually stamp out all that wizard magic. She can be a good girl and be a witch. So she takes her under her wing, starts teaching her witch magic. Esk is always wanting to do more interesting stuff, and she's learning a lot of witch magic, or how Granny Weatherwax approaches it anyway. We don't really know if other witches approach it differently, but how Granny Weatherwax approaches it is, it's very you just get the right herbs, and then you just do a blah 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 around it so people think you're doing a spell. But really it's just about giving people herbs that they need, and the rest is like a placebo spell. And Esk is like, this is really disappointing, because I want real magic, please. So yeah, and then it comes to a point where it's quite apparent that Esk has this magic. She's very strong and very powerful, and it cannot be ignored any longer. Granny goes to her parents and says, look, I'm going to take her to Unseen University. I don't know how we're going to get them to take her in, because they only take boys, but we've got to do it. They go on a little quest to get to the university, and she does make it to the university, and there's like a big kind of 3rd act drama, which is really impressive, and Esk and Granny Weatherwax end up having to like step in, and they end up helping out a lot, which kind of proves that women can do wizard magic, and Esk ends up getting like accepted into the university, and Granny Weatherwax takes a position there as a professor, because the head of the university is like, well, if we take Esk in, we need to take girls in, basically, we can't just take her. So he opens it up and he's like, Granny, like, because they have a bit of a flirtation, and he's basically like, Granny, will you, I don't think he calls her Granny, I think he calls her by her real name, but Granny, will you come and like take these girls under your wing and teach them like plants and herbology and what have you? And Granny's like, yeah, go on then. But the whole kind of, yes, there's the adventure of Esk and Granny getting there, and the quest and what happens to them along the way, and the people they meet, but like, it's mostly about how ridiculous the binary notion of guys only do this and girls only do that, and that's that. And it really brings to light how absolutely stupid that is, and how just, I was going to say not of the times, but you know, in terms of the history of humans, it's quite a recent thing that we've decided to be so strict in the division amongst genders. So yeah, I don't know, but Terry Pratchett was out here doing it. He was out here saying, this is absolute bullshit, what are you talking about? And I loved Esk. She was so fun. So I don't know how many books are in the Witches collection. I don't know. After I read like Fantastic, I had to look at the books to see when I would next have an Unseen University book, but I forgot that I had Mort on my desk. So when I worked out the numbers, I had them a bit wrong. So my next vlog, because I'm going to do 3 books of vlog, I'll have a Death collection, a Unseen University collection, and another Witches one. Yes, so we'll come back to this. I'm assuming, I don't know if we follow Esk through all the Witches collection, or if we follow just different witches, but this was such a fantastic start to this series. It was a great way to be introduced to it. It's a great way to kind of dip your toe into the, like, Terry Pratchett, where his like morals and thoughts lie. You can I just think that you cannot read this series and not see where Terry Pratchett's political leanings lent at all, because it's just written through it all, and it's so fun, and it's so just enjoyable, and it is just so far it's so full of joy. And I just cannot believe that I have finally decided to sit down and properly read the series. Obviously, as a child or like an early teen, I've read a few of these. I think I got them, well, no, from the library. I've read a few of them, but I have no clue which ones I read. I cannot remember any of them. I remember quite well a series that was like Diggers and Truckers or something, but I'm very excited. And I'm pleased to do like a rewatch of the adaptations that have been done. Sky used to do a lot of adaptations, and they spent a lot of money on it, and they used to come out like around Christmas time. I think they did 3 or 4 adaptations, and I've watched them when they came out. So when I finish this, I'd like to go back and rewatch them and see if there's any other adaptations I never knew about. But yes, so far great. So that is episode 1 of Around the Discworld in 41 books. And obviously there'll be the companion books as well. But yes, thank you for joining me. I'm so pleased I managed to get this out over the Christmas period as well. And then I will be coming back strong with episode 2 in the new year. If you haven't yet, please consider liking, subscribe whilst you're down there. Let me know in the comments your favourite Discworld book. And thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you soon for another video. Bye, friends.